Hello, Seth Berman. He is joining me today from Austin, Texas, and he is the head of growth marketing at Stripe. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, you've been working in marketing and acquisition over the course of a few massive technological shifts. Now we have the emergence of AI and more regulation around privacy that's, really hurting the ability of companies to sort of track customers all over the internet. Where do you see demand gen and marketing heading in the next couple of years? Any hopeful or dire predictions?
Yeah, so I think we were fortunate enough, many of us, to sort of live and market through the golden years of performance marketing. There were some years when advertising on Facebook was, if you did the right things, you got good results. It was pretty reliable and really magical for a period of time. We are beyond those days since app tracking transparency introduction, and also Apple has another lesser known but equally important sort of thing that they do called ITP, Intelligent Tracking Prevention, which is a browser-focused privacy measure.
Oh,
And
man.
that has actually made things like mobile programmatic display a lot less effective, and that's actually been going on for several years. So that, Apple was ahead of the game in making it harder to track users both on browser and in app. Others are following. Even Google has expressed an intention to disable cookies in Chrome, although the date
Wow.
keeps moving. I think that all is not lost, and certainly, I see decreasing fidelity of data, in various reporting methods. So, I think what we are seeing, and I think we'll see more of, is the sort of return to methods like marketing mix modeling, which
Hmm.
is in fact quite a it's a long-standing tool that fell out of favor when marketers were able to do deterministic measurement,
Hmm.
and has returned now that marketers have less of an ability to do deterministic measurement. So marketing mix modeling is seeing a resurgence. I expect that to continue. And in fact, marketing mix modeling didn't used to be an attribution method. It used to
Hmm.
be a budget allocation method, and it's also starting to become an attribution method.
Hmm.
So I think this probabilistic way of estimating the performance of our marketing is, we're pretty much already there in a lot of
Yeah.
areas. And I think what's really exciting about that is we're seeing a number of startups introducing products that allow smaller businesses to do kind of the data science work required for this probabilistic attribution to exist, and they're producing off the shelf products that startups and smaller businesses can use. And so that's actually a very exciting development, where it's not just there was a period here recently where only the largest companies with data science teams, especially ones dedicated to marketing, were
Yeah.
able to deal with these changes. But now we're seeing a flurry of startups and kind of services businesses that are actually focused on smaller companies.
Oh, man. Thank goodness. It's getting rough out there. How have you seen that the work of growth teams become more efficient or make an outsized impact compared to a few years ago?
Yeah, so I'd say the hype is has died down, which is probably a good thing for everyone.
Yeah.
And really, product growth teams have simply become, it's sort of assumed that any kind of digital products business has a growth team. So it's not like oh, we're going to try out a growth team, or we need to prove the value of a growth team, or
Yeah.
where these kind of teams get formed and disbanded and things like that. it has become a permanent function in digital products businesses at a minimum, and even beyond that to an extent. So I think that is certainly a positive development, because it alleviates, first of all, it removes the hype. It also alleviates the we all need to prove ourselves every day, and it alleviates the sort of need to prove that a growth team is necessary. So I think that has allowed teams to focus on longer time horizons, which is good, because I think a pitfall of growth teams is, because they need to like prove value, they tend to focus on shorter term, more tactical things to do, which might be useful and effective, but are really incremental and they're not needle movers really. So I think that's probably the biggest shift that I've seen is an assumption that a growth team is necessary, which allows growth teams to focus a bit on longer term objectives. I think another piece is is really a focus on our growth teams experimentation only, or do they also own business metrics that they need to sort of manage on a day-to-day basis? So I think that's an interesting, in some organizations, growth teams own the number, and in some organizations, they're more of a like, let's experiment our way into some incremental benefits, or even better, some breakthroughs.
Yeah. Do you have an opinion on sort of, if you had your druthers, which one is the best practice?
I think growth teams should own business metrics.
Yeah.
I think that's really the best way to align growth teams with, the outcomes of the business. I think it's a mistake when teams are really overly focused on experimentation velocity, which can happen. And teams don't exist to. No team in any company exists to experiment. Experimentation is a way to learn things that we don't know, and to generate hit our numbers basically. And I so definitely I think owning a number or numbers is really required.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any advice for product managers who want to be better at collaborating with go to market? I know often growth marketing and growth product, I think in an ideal world, are on the same growth team, but often it's the case that they report into totally different functions. What would you say to a product manager who wants to be a good friend to marketing and learn from and help them?
Yeah, I think what we just touched on in terms of have owning a number.
Yeah,
Go to market teams are used to owning numbers. And in some cases, less so on the marketing side, but certainly on the sales side of go to market, sales teams are, carry a bag, right? They have a quota. Their
yeah,
compensation depends on hitting a number. And so I
yeah,
think that can be a disconnect between go to market teams and product teams, is if go to market teams feel like they have more skin in the game than a product team does. And
mm,
so I think the more those teams can be aligned and acknowledge that they have a similar type of skin in the game, I think
yeah.
that helps. That helps with the spiritual connection between product and go-to-market teams, where a product team is not focused on shipping features; they're focused on driving business results.
Yeah, I sometimes do wonder what it would be like if, a product-led growth team or just a growth team generally did have a quota and even got paid out in the same way that go-to-market teams. I mean, what a different world that would be.
It sure would. I have had something like that as a marketer in the past. It's pretty tough.
Really?
Yes,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah. It's it certainly creates the right incentives.
Hmm.
I think the challenge is, if you're an individual salesperson, then have some degree of control over what you produce.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a marketer, you have some control over some of what you produce. But it's definitely. I mean, it was an interesting experiment. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny the extent to which defining what a metric is for a team and that sort of organizational control is very much game design in terms of, you've set what the high score should be. And then it's interesting to see the emergent behavior that sort of like drives different teams to different levels of execution on those scores.
Yes.
Cool. So our last question today is a fun, totally theoretical, kind of silly one. But if you could know just one metric about any business that exists in the past or is live today, but that you're not involved with, which metric would you pick, and for what company?
Well, OpenAI is, of course, a fascinating business right now, and
Yeah.
there are many things that I would love to know about OpenAI. One, I'd say if there's like one metric I'd like to know, it would be their, what their retention looks like for their paid plans.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting to understand and to get a sense of, certainly they appear to have product market fit, and the retention of paid users would sort of I think give insight into the extent to which they have that fit right now, and
Yeah.
the extent to which users are willing to pay and to continue to pay for the product.
Yeah. And I think it seems like it's been not even a year, I think, since they launched that product. So they're probably waiting on pins and needles as well to see what their paid retention on an annualized basis is going to look like.
It's pretty incredible. And they also have, on the enterprise side, they have a pretty good distribution partner in Microsoft.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Of course.